One of my favourite aspects of Breath of the Wild is its environmental storytelling, communicating stories and the world's history simply through how Hyrule itself is designed. Details such as finding a fire wizrobe gleefully dancing through the charred remains of a village, hinting at a dark, fiery fate for the settlement and its residents. Or a gaping, perfectly cylindrical hole in the mountainside, where a divine beast's laser might have torn through. And there are few examples of this better than the game's Guardians, the signature enemy of Breath of the Wild and one of the most intimidating foes seen in the series yet. These spider-like mechanical nightmares were the work of the ancient Sheikah, a technologically hyper-advanced civilization who designed an army of autonomous soldiers, the Guardians themselves and the titanic divine beasts, to defend the land against the Calamity Ganon. As Breath of the Wild's backstory reveals, however, this plan backfired horrendously, with the Calamity poisoning the machines with his own malicious influence, turning the Guardians on the kingdom they were built to protect. A century after the Great Calamity, Hyrule still crawls with Guardians, who can be found nearly everywhere across the kingdom in different forms: stalkers, skywatchers, and turrets. But not only are there still active Guardians roaming the wilds, the broken hulls of destroyed Guardians litter the land, slowly being reclaimed by nature. It's these destroyed machines that serve to tell the story of the Calamity years ago. The most prevalent are the remains of Guardians found surrounding Fort Hateno and Akala Citadel, the sites of two of the greatest battles during the Great Calamity. I've got videos covering these events, but even without the story, the Guardians themselves can show us the outcome. Akala Citadel was where the military of Hyrule suffered a crushing defeat, and Guardians can be seen even at the peak of the stronghold, which was completely overrun. But at Fort Hateno, where Princess Zelda's powers saved the Hylians from certain death, we can see broken Guardians frozen while scaling the small fort, yet none have managed to cross it. But today I want to cover a few of the more obscure stories told by Breath of the Wild's deceased Guardians, less evident than those told by the great battlefields. There's a Guardian found in the shadow of Death Mountain, a ruined machine half buried in the dirt over the years. However, unlike the countless Guardians across the land whose fate isn't made explicitly clear, we can see exactly what killed this one. Its eye is pierced by a single arrow. Resting on the Guardian's hull is a rusty shield, and just nearby a Dragonbone Moblin spear is embedded deep into the ground. It seems that this Guardian was slain during the last stand of some knight or hero, who put down his spear and shield for a last-ditch close-range shot at the Guardian, landing an arrow square in the machine's weak point, its eye. Judging by the Moblin spear, whoever took down this Guardian was likely a seasoned fighter, who had killed various monsters before. We'll never know exactly who this warrior was, but the evidence of his triumph over a Guardian can be seen here. Deceased Guardians of course litter Hyrule Castle, ground zero of the Great Calamity, where Ganon first appeared and took control of the Sheikah forces. It was during this resurgence of the Calamity that 5 colossal columns surrounding the castle appeared, rising from deep beneath the ground as their ancient creators had programmed. They were intended as a defense mechanism against Ganon, to sense his reappearance and retaliate by pouring forth hundreds of Guardians. However, as we know, Calamity Ganon was cunning, corrupting the columns and the Guardians within to his own cause, and turning them on the kingdom. Before the appearance of these columns, some Guardians had been excavated elsewhere, such as beneath Hyrule Castle, where we can see Guardians half buried in a wall in the mines. But it's safe to assume that most of the scores of Guardians under Ganon's control came from these columns during the Calamity itself, a mechanism which is detailed in Creating a Champion, where we can see that at one point during development, Guardians were designed to leave the columns through these large coloured circles, rotating as they emerged. It's horrifying to think that during the Calamity, hundreds of Guardians would have been crawling out of these pillars, like spiders from a nest, and we can even see a guardian on top of each column. It's possible that these could have been on the ground before the columns rose and were carried into the sky by the rising Sheikah pillars, but there's a guardian on top of every single column, meaning that it's more likely that they emerged from the constructs themselves. So these 5 broken guardians atop the columns are frozen in one of the darkest, most pivotal moments in Hyrule's history, petrified as they poured forth from the columns into Hyrule. If we move inwards from these 5 columns, we enter Hyrule Castle proper, a stronghold riddled with Calamity Ganon's dark influence. In the central room, the Sanctum, the Calamity itself lurks, writhing and convulsing inside some sick cocoon, attempting to forge itself a new body. During the Calamity Ganon boss fight, we see an incomplete form of his body, a horrific splice of Sheikah technology and malice with what appears to be guardian legs at the rear. What's interesting is that near Calamity Ganon's cocoon, suspended from the ceiling by malice, are the broken hulls of 2 guardians, which seem to be wired in almost to the Calamity itself. Why would there be guardians suspended upside down, hanging from the ceiling in the Sanctum of Hyrule Castle? Could these guardians actually be in the process of being assimilated into Ganon's body, resulting in the addition of guardian parts to the Calamity Ganon? There aren't many ruined guardians directly surrounding the peaceful haven of Kakariko Village, which is comfortably nestled in the mountains of North Necluda. However, just northwest of the village, in the Rikoka Hills, there's a strange detail. 3 destroyed guardians surrounding the ruins of a building. There are no Koroks here, no active enemies, only this ruined building, the destroyed guardians, and a single rusty sword planted in the dirt nearby. It seems that this building exploded somehow, taking out all 3 attacking guardians with it. It looks similar to the other burned ruins across Hyrule, left smouldering in the wake of a guardian or a Wizrobe assault, though the 3 surrounding guardians here seem to have been destroyed during their attack on the building, which has spontaneously detonated. What was this place? Some kind of bomb shop? Why did it explode, taking out all 3 attacking guardians? And why were guardians attacking this remote building in the first place? It must have been important in some way for guardians to have travelled to such a remote location, and whatever or whoever was inside managed to defeat 3 guardian stalkers. There's a similar ruin near the Proxime Bridge, another building which seemingly exploded, taking out a guardian with it. The Zora stone monuments tell the stories of the Zora tribe's greatest accomplishments. They account the tales of famous Zora like Ocarina of Time's Ruto and her awakening as the Sage of Water, and even a particularly cool story about Prince Sidon, who apparently was swallowed whole by a colossal Octorok in Hateno Bay, but continued to fight the beast from within its stomach until he was spat out. One story carved into a monument is known as King Dorephan Stands His Ground, telling the tale of an assault on Zora's domain by a guardian. The home of the Zora's sheltered location meant that it largely avoided the brunt of the Great Calamity. Though according to this monument, a stray guardian entered the domain around a century after King Dorephan ascended to the throne. The machine seemed unstoppable, with the spears of the best Zora soldiers barely scratching the thick metal hull. Despite the efforts of the Zora warriors, the Guardian's unrelenting assault continued. After the initial attempts to stop the Guardian had all failed, King Dorephan himself came out to face the corrupted engine. Dorephan wielded no weapons. He instead strode over to the Guardian, lifted it from the ground, and hurled it into a nearby ravine. The scar earned by the king can be seen to this day on his forehead, a token of his triumph. We can indeed see a scar on Dorephan's head, lending some credence to this story. But is the rest true, or one of the embellished stories which often surround royalty? Well, near the Lanayru Tower, there's a small ravine. And sitting in this ravine, in the centre of a small pond, lie the broken remains of a single guardian, the only one found this close to the home of the Zora. Could this be the very same guardian which assaulted the domain, and was hurled down into this ravine by the mighty King Darifan himself? It's never made explicit, it's up to the player to decide. All we know is, if King Darifan really did take on a guardian in single combat, by simply picking it up and throwing it away, he's one of the most metal characters the series has ever seen. Thanks for watching this little video covering some of Breath of the Wild's environmental storytelling. If you'd like more videos like this, let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like or subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.